The air tastes like copper and ash. Kashi Yamada runs through rubble that was once Motomachi District, his bare feet slicing open on shards of melted glass that glitter like black diamonds in the moonlight. Behind him, something moves between the skeletal remains of buildings. Not running, not walking, but flowing, like smoke given weight and purpose. His lungs burn. Every breath pulls in particles of what used to be homes, temples, people. The August heat hasn't broken, even though the sun set hours ago. The ground itself still radiates warmth, concrete and stone holding on to the memory of that terrible flash 5 days earlier. He doesn't dare look back. The sound follows him, a wet dragging, accompanied by a clicking that reminds him of bamboo wind chimes, but wrong, organic. His sister Yuki stumbles beside him, her nurse's uniform torn and blackened, one hand clutching his arm with fingers that grip too tight, nails digging crescents into his skin. "What is it?" she gasps. But Takeshi has no answer. They'd been searching for survivors in the basement of the old postal building when they heard it, that clicking, echoing up from deeper in the ruins. Then came the smell, overwhelming the ever-present stench of burnt flesh and wood. Something ancient, like open tombs, like the earth's belly split wide. Yuki trips. Takeshi catches her, but they both go down, knees cracking against broken tiles that once formed someone's kitchen floor. The clicking stops. In the sudden silence, Takeshi hears his own heartbeat and feels the pulse in his temples. The ruins around them loom in sharp relief against the night sky, jagged shadows that could hide anything, or everything. Then he hears breathing that isn't theirs. It comes from above, slowly, knowing he shouldn't, knowing with every instinct screaming at him not to. Takeshi looks up. The silhouette crouched atop the ruined wall shouldn't be possible. Too tall, limbs bent at angles that defy human anatomy, head cocked with an almost curious tilt. Two eyes reflect the moonlight. Not animal shine. Something else. Something that burns with its own pale luminescence, the color of radiation and water. The creature's mouth opens. August 1945. 5 days after the bomb. The world has changed in the span of a single heartbeat. On August 6, 1945, at precisely 8:15 in the morning, the American B-29 bomber Enola Gay released a uranium-based atomic bomb nicknamed Little Boy over the city of Hiroshima. The weapon detonated 1,900 feet above the city center with the force of 16 kilotons of TNT. In an instant, temperatures at the hypocenter reached 3,000 degrees Celsius. Buildings vaporized. Shadows of people burned permanently into stone walls. The only trace left of their existence. Tens of thousands died immediately. Tens of thousands more would follow in the coming hours, days, and weeks, from burns, injuries, and a mysterious sickness no one yet understood. Japan teeters on the brink of surrender. Emperor Hirohito has not yet made his historic radio address. The Soviet Union has just declared war. Invading Manchuria, the world holds its breath, waiting to see if another bomb will fall, if another city will burn. In Hiroshima, the survivors call themselves Hibakusha. They wander the ruins like ghosts themselves, searching for family members, for water, for any meaning in the apocalyptic landscape their city has become. The rivers flowing through Hiroshima run thick with bodies. The smell is indescribable. Burnt hair, flesh, rubber, metal, all melding into a single overwhelming stench that coats the throat and never quite leaves. But something else moves in the ruins now, something the survivors speak of only in whispers, and only to each other, afraid that speaking too loudly might draw its attention. The Americans have imposed strict information control. All mail is censored. Journalists are forbidden from entering the city. The official story is a new type of bomb, nothing more, but the military police and occupation forces preparing to arrive don't venture into the ruins at night. Even they have heard the reports. In traditional Japanese folklore, catastrophe invites yokai, supernatural beings, demons, spirits of the dead. The old people say that violence on a scale never before witnessed might tear holes in the veil between worlds. They whisper names, gaki, the hungry ghosts, or perhaps something with no name, something born from the atomic fire itself. The ruins of Hiroshima stretch for miles in every direction from the hypocenter. What was once a thriving city of 340,000 people is now a graveyard of concrete skeletons and carbonized timber. At night, fires still burn. Spontaneous combustions from gas lines, from smoldering debris that hasn't yet finished consuming itself. These fires cast dancing shadows that make the ruins seem alive, breathing. The Motomachi district, where our story centers, lies approximately 800 meters from the Hippocenter. Before the bomb, this was a densely packed residential and commercial area, with narrow streets lined with traditional wooden makia townhouses, mixed with newer concrete structures. The Kyobashi River ran along its eastern edge, one of the 7 rivers that gave Hiroshima its distinctive character. Now, Motomachi is hell made manifest. The blast wave flattened everything within a 2-kilometer radius. Buildings that survived the initial explosion burned in the firestorms that followed. What remains are fragments. A torii gate standing alone, its shrine vaporized behind it. A bank vault torn open. Papers fluttering in the night breeze. Staircases leading nowhere, connecting floors that no longer exist. The heat was so intense that sand melted into glass, creating grotesque sculptures that glitter in the daylight. Shadows burned into walls show people caught mid-motion. A woman reaching for her child. A man pulling a cart. Figures frozen in their last moments. At night, the temperature drops, but the ground still radiates warmth. The darkness is not complete. Fires glow in the distance, and some survivors have lit makeshift lanterns from salvaged oil. But between these pools of light stretch vast expanses of shadow where anything might hide. The smell shifts with the wind. Sometimes it's smoke, acrid and choking. Sometimes it's decay, sweet and nauseating. And sometimes, survivors report, it's something else entirely. A mineral scent, like ozone after lightning, mixed with something organic and wrong. The silence is oppressive. Before the bomb, Hiroshima was alive with sound. Vendors calling out, children laughing, bicycle bells, the rumble of streetcars. Now, the loudest sounds are the cries of the injured, the crackle of flames, and the groaning of structures continuing their slow collapse. Water has become precious. The city's infrastructure is destroyed. Survivors crowd the rivers, but the water is contaminated with debris, bodies, and radiation no one yet understands. Those who drink directly from the rivers often sicken and die within days, their hair falling out, skin erupting in purple spots, gums bleeding. In this landscape of death and destruction, search and rescue efforts continue, desperate and chaotic. Survivors form small groups, picking through the ruins, calling out names, listening for responses from beneath the rubble. They work mostly during daylight hours. Very few venture deep into the ruins after dark. Those who do sometimes don't return. Takeshi Yamada, age 32, is a former postal clerk who survived the bombing only because he called in sick that morning, sleeping off a fever in his home on the city's outskirts. His postal building took the full force of the blast. Everyone inside died instantly, vaporized or crushed. Takeshi is medium height, lean from wartime rationing, with close-cropped black hair and a face that was once prone to easy smiles. Now his eyes hold a haunted quality, dark circles beneath them from sleepless nights. He wears the remnants of his postal uniform, the jacket torn and stained but still recognizable. Before the war, Takeshi dreamed of being a teacher. He loved literature, poetry, the old stories his grandmother told him about spirits and demons. After conscription, he served 2 years in China before a knee injury sent him home, deemed unfit for further combat. He walks with a slight limp now, especially when tired. The guilt of surviving weighs on him. Why him, and not his co-workers, his friends, the innocent? He's been searching the ruins compulsively, helping whoever he can find, as if enough rescued lives might balance the ledger of his undeserved survival. His weakness, he freezes in moments of extreme danger, his body locking up, a remnant of trauma from the war when he watched his unit get ambushed. Yuki Yamada, age 28, is Takeshi's younger sister, and a nurse who worked at Hiroshima Red Cross Hospital. She was in the basement inventory room when the bomb fell, shielded by layers of concrete and earth. She emerged to find her hospital transformed into an overwhelmed death house, the injured and dying packed into every space, hallways slick with blood, the staff frantically trying to help with inadequate supplies and no understanding of what they were treating. Yuki is small and slight, her hair cut short for practicality, wearing the white uniform of her profession now permanently stained gray and brown. Her hands shake when she's not actively working. a tremor that started the day of the bombing and hasn't stopped. But when she's treating someone, setting a bone or cleaning a wound, her hands steady completely, moving with practiced precision. She possesses a fierce determination that borders on stubbornness. Before becoming a nurse, she wanted to be a doctor, but her gender made that path nearly impossible. She settled for nursing but approached it with the thoroughness and intelligence of a physician. She's seen horrors that would break most people. Children with their skin hanging off, people whose faces melted, the mysterious radiation sickness that causes people to seemingly recover before suddenly dying days later. Her weakness, she takes responsibility for deaths she cannot prevent, carrying each loss as a personal failure. This guilt drives her to take risks, to keep searching when she should rest. Kenji Sato, age 56, is a physician who trained in Tokyo and returned to Hiroshima to open a private practice. He's tall for a Japanese man of his generation, with silver threading his black hair and wire-rimmed glasses held together with tape after one lens shattered during the blast. He wears a Western-style suit, now tattered and filthy, over a shirt that was once white. He carries a battered medical bag everywhere, its contents depleted and improvised. Dr. Toktard, Sato represents the old world educated, rational, scientific. He studied in Europe before the war, spending 2 years in Berlin observing the latest medical techniques. He speaks some German and English, reads Western medical journals when he can get them, and prides himself on his modern, evidence-based approach to medicine. The bombing has shaken his worldview. The injuries he's treating make no sense. People who appear fine suddenly dying, their white blood cell counts plummeting. Symptoms that match no disease in his textbooks. He's begun keeping detailed notes, documenting everything, sensing he's witnessing something unprecedented. He joined the search efforts because patients told him about family members still missing. Dr. Tomer, Sato doesn't believe in spirits or demons. He spent his career fighting against superstition, advocating for scientific medicine over traditional remedies. But even his rationality is being tested by what he's seen in the ruins. His weakness, his skepticism blinds him to danger. He needs to understand, to find logical explanations, and this curiosity can override his survival instincts. Corporal James Morrison, age 24, is an American Marine scout who shouldn't be in Hiroshima yet. He's part of an advanced reconnaissance unit sent to assess the damage before the main occupation forces arrive. Morrison is tall and broad-shouldered, his blonde hair buzzed close to his skull. His uniform still crisp despite the ash coating everything. He carries an M1 Garand rifle and speaks no Japanese beyond basic commands learned in military training. Morrison grew up in rural Montana, the son of a rancher, comfortable with isolation and harsh conditions. He's seen combat in the Pacific, Saipan, Guam, Okinawa, and the violence has left its mark. He doesn't sleep well, startles at loud noises, and drinks when he can get it. But he's also fundamentally decent, uncomfortable with the casual racism some of his fellow soldiers display toward the Japanese. Being in Hiroshima affects him deeply. He expected a bombed city, having seen the results of conventional firebombing in Tokyo. But this is different. The scale, the totality of destruction, the strange injuries on survivors. When he encounters Japanese civilians in the ruins, he finds himself helping them, sharing his water and rations, despite orders to maintain distance. He's not supposed to be in Motomachi tonight. His unit is camped on the city's outskirts, but he volunteered for night patrol, restless, unable to sit still, and his route took him into the ruins just as the sun set. His weakness, he carries a deep guilt about what his country did to this city. This guilt makes him take risks to help survivors, trying to atone for something he had no part in deciding. Obasan Mizuki Tanaka, age 73, is a neighborhood elder who survived despite being only 600 meters from the Hippocenter. She was in her basement, descended into the earth to retrieve pickled vegetables from her stores. The walls collapsed around her, but a fallen beam created a pocket of space that saved her life. She dug herself out 3 days later, emerging into a world she no longer recognized. Mizuki is small and bent with age, her face deeply lined, her hair completely white and bound in a traditional style. She wears a tattered kimono that was once beautiful, now burned and torn. She walks with a wooden cane salvaged from the ruins, her movements slow but deliberate. She is the carrier of old knowledge, folk tales, superstitions, the traditional ways that modern Japan has been abandoning. Her family has lived in Hiroshima for 7 generations. She knows stories that predate the Meiji Restoration, tales told to her by her grandmother who heard them from her grandmother. She's seen things in the ruins, shadows, and shapes that don't move like the living. Unlike the others, she's not surprised. Catastrophe invites the other world, she says. The ancestors tried to warn against such hubris, such terrible weapons. Now the barrier is thin, worn away by violence and death. Her weakness, her age. She's slow, exhausted, her body failing, but her mind remains sharp, and she possesses knowledge the others will desperately need. Why they're there. The group converges on Motomachi for different reasons, their paths crossing in the ruins as night falls. Kashi and Yuki are searching for the Nakamura family. Mother and 3 children who live 2 streets from where the Yamadas grew up. Mrs. Nakamura's husband is serving in Manchuria. A neighbor reported hearing crying from the ruins of their home yesterday, but by the time rescuers arrived, the sounds had stopped. Takeshi promised the neighbor he'd search again, more thoroughly. Sato received a report of survivors sheltering in the basement of the old postal building. His medical supplies are nearly exhausted, but he has morphine and bandages that could save lives. He convinced Takeshi and Yuki to guide him, knowing the area better than he does. Corporal Morrison's patrol route took him through Motomachi at dusk. When he heard voices calling in Japanese, he investigated, finding the search group. His training says he should report them, possibly detain them for questioning, but he sees the medical bag, the nurse's uniform, and understands they're helping people. He decides to follow them, offering his rifle for protection against looters, though he's not sure what good a gun will do against desperate, starving people. Mizuki is simply walking, making a pilgrimage through the ruins of her neighborhood. She's searching for her family shrine, buried somewhere in the rubble, wanting to pray for the dead before she joins them. When she hears the others nearby, she calls out, and Yuki insists they help her, that no one should be alone in the ruins at night. The postal building where they're heading partially collapsed, 3 stories reduced to 1, but the basement remained intact according to reports. It's the kind of place where survivors might hide, afraid to emerge, injured, trapped. None of them know that others have searched the postal building. 3 men went in yesterday afternoon. Only one came out, babbling about clicking sounds and eyes in the darkness. His companions dismissed him as shell-shocked. The man hanged himself that evening. The sun drops below the horizon at 7,003 p.m. The ruins transform in the fading light, familiar shapes becoming alien and threatening. The search group moves carefully through what used to be streets, now just paths between mounds of debris. Takeshi leads, his postal knowledge giving him an instinctual map of where streets should be. Yuki follows close, one hand on his shoulder. Dr. 10. Sato comes next, breathing heavily, his age showing in the difficult terrain. Morrison brings up the rear, rifle held ready, eyes scanning the ruins. Mizuki walks between the doctor and the American, her cane clicking against the ground with each step. They're 2 blocks from the postal building when Takeshi hears it, crying, distant and muffled, the sound of a child in distress. Ad-free one stops. Yuki grips Takeshi's shoulder tighter. Did you? I heard it. The crying comes again, clearer now, definitely a child, maybe 5 or 6 years old. It echoes through the ruins, impossible to pinpoint. Takeshi turns, trying to determine direction. The sound seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. Tasuketa, the child's voice calls. Help me. The word is stretched, plaintive, heartbreaking. Yuki moves before Takeshi can stop her, scrambling over a pile of broken concrete toward where she thinks the sound originated. Takeshi follows, his knee protesting. Dr. Sato calls for them to wait, to be careful. Morrison doesn't understand the Japanese words, but he understands the tone. Someone needs help. He follows, rifle slung over his shoulder as he climbs. The crying continues, leading them deeper into a maze of collapsed buildings. Takeshi's mental map begins to fail him. The destruction is too complete. No landmarks remain. They're in what should be a residential area, but it's impossible to tell where one home ended and another began. Tasukete. Yuki rounds the corner first. Takeshi comes up behind her and stops dead. There's nothing there. No child. No sign of anyone. Just an empty space where a building's interior has been exposed, like a dollhouse. Walls torn away. Rooms open to the night. Furniture reduced to charcoal. a child's wooden toy. A spinning top sits in the center of the floor, untouched, pristine, as if someone just set it down. The crying stops. In the sudden silence, Takeshi's skin prickles. The air feels wrong, too cold, too still. No wind, no sound of distant fires, no night insects. Just silence pressing against his eardrums. Where did they go? Yuki whispers. Mizuki arrives last, leaning heavily on her cane, breath wheezing. She surveys the empty room, and her expression grows dark. She mutters something under her breath, a phrase Takeshi doesn't quite catch, something about hungry things. Morrison sweeps his rifle across the space, finger near the trigger. Even without understanding the conversation, he feels it. Wrongness permeating the air like the smell of ozone before a storm. Dr. Sato examines the toy, picking it up. Someone's playing a cruel trick, he says, but his voice lacks conviction. He turns the top over in his hands, noting how clean it is, how perfect. Everything else is covered in ash, but this is pristine. We should go, Mizuki says firmly. This place is not safe. Not anymore. Keshi wants to argue, wants to search more, but his grandmother's stories surface unbidden in his mind, tales of voices that lure travelers off paths, spirits that mimic the living to draw prey close. Before he can speak, the clicking begins. It comes from above them, from the exposed upper floor that tilts at a precarious angle. Click, 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 rhythmic and deliberate, like bamboo chimes, but organic, wet. The sound raises every hair on Takeshi's neck. They all look up, just darkness and twisted metal beams. The clicking stops, then it starts again, behind them, from deeper in the ruins where they just came from. Morrison unslings his rifle, a smooth, practiced motion. He says something in English, his tone urgent. A question. Sato translates roughly. He asks what that sound is. The clicking moves, circling them, always just beyond sight, and with it comes that smell. Ancient earth and copper and something else. Something that makes Takeshi think of the morgues his sister describes. Of flesh beginning its transformation into something no longer human. We leave, Mizuki says. Now. They move quickly, abandoning the search, heading back the way they came. But the ruins look different now, unfamiliar. Takeshi can't find his landmarks. They turn one way, find their path blocked by collapsed walls that weren't there before. Or were they? And he just didn't notice. The clicking follows, patient, unhurried, and beneath it, so faint Takeshi almost misses it, comes the sound of a child crying. Fainter now, more distant, leading deeper into the ruins. The second encounter. The group emerges from the maze of collapsed buildings into a more open area. What was once a neighborhood square where vendors would set up stalls on market days. Now it's a field of debris, with a crater at its center. Probably from a secondary explosion after the blast. Small fires burn around the crater's edge, fed by broken gas lines, casting dancing shadows. They stop to catch their breath. Morrison maintains a watch, rifle sweeping the perimeter. Sato checks everyone for injuries. Minor scrapes and cuts from the scramble through rubble. Yuki's hands have stopped shaking, steadied by action and adrenaline. Takeshi's knee throbs. He sinks onto a chunk of concrete, massaging the joint. Did anyone else see anything? He asks, when we heard the clicking. Yuki shakes her head. Dr. Tokter resting, Sato admits he saw movement, but it could have been shadows from their lights. Morrison doesn't understand the question, but when Doctor can, Sato translates. The American's expression grows troubled. He responds in halting English that the doctor translates. He saw something on the rooftop, a silhouette, but when he looked directly at it, nothing was there. Peripheral vision sometimes plays tricks, Dr. Sato says, but he doesn't sound convinced. Mizuki sits apart from them, facing back toward the ruins they just left. She's muttering under her breath. Prayers, Takeshi realizes. Old Buddhist sutras for protection against evil spirits. Olba-san, Yuki approaches gently. What do you think it was? Aisles. The old woman turns, and in the firelight her face looks ancient, carved with knowledge and sorrow. When I was a girl, she begins, my grandmother told me about the gaki-hungry ghosts that feed on the living. They are born from violent deaths, from people who died with unfulfilled desires. They hunger always, never satisfied, drawn to places of suffering. Yeah, Sato scoffs, trying to inject rationality. With respect, Tanaka-san, those are old wives' tales. What we heard was likely structural settling, wind through the ruins, or even survivors who became frightened when they saw us. You don't believe me. Mizuki's eyes glitter. You think your Western medicine explains everything. Tell me, doctor, why do patients who seem well suddenly die? Why does their hair fall out, their skin bruises purple? What sickness is this? Doctor. Sato has no answer. The radiation sickness confounds him, defies everything he learned in Berlin and Tokyo, but he's not ready to abandon science for superstition. There's a rational explanation, he insists. Perhaps chemical contamination from the bomb, or a new type of biological weapon, comes from their left, from a cluster of ruined buildings about 50 meters away. A woman's scream, high and terrified, cutting off abruptly into wet gurgling. Morrison moves first, soldier's instincts overriding caution. He sprints toward the sound, rifle up. Takeshi forces himself up despite his knee following. The others trail behind. They find her in what used to be someone's garden, now just scorched earth, and the twisted metal skeleton of a greenhouse. She's on her back, eyes wide and staring, mouth open in a silent scream. Her throat has been torn open, not cut, torn, with ragged edges that suggest claws or teeth. Blood pools beneath her, still warm, still flowing. Yuki falls to her knees beside the woman, checking for a pulse even though it's obviously futile. She just died, Yuki whispers. Seconds ago. Nothing moves. No sound except their harsh breathing and the distant crackle of fires. Sato examines the wounds with professional detachment, though his hands shake. The carotid is severed. She would have lost consciousness in seconds. He looks at the pattern of the tears. These wounds, they're not from shrapnel or debris. Something bit her. An animal. Maybe dogs have gone feral, feeding on. He points to marks on the woman's shoulder, visible through her torn clothing. The bite radius is too large. And these claw marks, 4 parallel gouges. They're spaced too wide for a dog or cat. Morrison speaks, his voice tight. Dr. Sato translates. He says the blood is fresh. Whatever I did, this is still close. The clicking starts again, louder now, no longer trying to hide. It comes from multiple directions. Above them, to the sides, surrounding them, and with it, that smell intensifies, making Yuki gag. Shapes move in the darkness between buildings, not shadows, shapes, with weight and presence. They circle the group, staying just beyond the firelight's reach. Takeshi counts at least 3, maybe 4. Impossible to tell. They move wrong, too fluid. Joints bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. When one crosses in front of a fire's glow, he sees it in silhouette tall, impossibly tall, hunched but still towering, with elongated limbs and a head that seems too large for its body. Morrison fires. The rifle's crack is deafening in the night silence. The muzzle flash illuminates the space ahead, and there, for a split second, Takeshi sees it clearly. Gray-white skin stretched too tight over angular bones, eyes that catch the light and reflect it with pale luminescence, a mouth that splits the face too wide, filled with rows of needle teeth, limbs too long, fingers that extend into blackened claws, and, most horrible, its overall shape is humanoid, a mockery of human form twisted into something alien. Then darkness returns, the image burned into Takeshi's retinas. Yes, boar, Morrison shouts. One word Takeshi understands in English. They run, attempts to rationalize. The group finds shelter in a partially collapsed department store, barricading themselves in what used to be the second floor. The stairs have collapsed, so they're accessible only by climbing through a gap in the wall. Defensible, or so they hope. Morrison positions himself at the entrance, rifle aimed at the opening. The others collapse against the far wall, gasping for breath. They ran for 10 minutes straight, hearing that clicking behind them, never quite catching up but never falling behind either, as if whatever chased them was toying with them. Now, in relative safety, the arguments begin. What was that thing? Yuki demands, her voice shaking. That wasn't human, was an animal. Fear, darkness, brief glimpse. Our minds fill in details that aren't there. It could have been a survivor, injured, deformed by burns or radiation. You saw its teeth, Takeshi snaps. You saw how it moved. Sato counters. Not enough to draw conclusions. Morrison speaks, frustrated, gesturing emphatically. Dr. Card, Sato translates with obvious reluctance. He says he's seen dead bodies move from gas buildup, seen men crazed from battle trauma become animals, but that thing, he's never seen anything move like that. It was hunting us. Predatory behavior doesn't mean supernatural, Dr. Sato argues, but his conviction is wavering, perhaps survivors driven mad by trauma, by starvation, reverting to primitive instincts. You think someone killed that woman for food? Yuki's voice rises, tore her throat out with their teeth. Silence follows. The image of those wounds, those claw marks, hangs in the air between them. Mizuki speaks softly from the corner. You don't want to believe. To believe means accepting that the world is not what you thought, that the rules you learn don't apply, but belief is not required. It will feed on you whether you accept its existence or not. What is it? Takeshi asks her. You called them gaki-hungry ghosts. Is that what we're dealing with? Mizuki considers. Gaki is the closest word, but they are different from the stories. Stronger, more physical. The bomb created something new, I think, or awakened something old that should have stayed sleeping. Dr. Sato laughs, a bitter sound. So your explanation is that an American atomic weapon created demons. That's easier to believe than survivors driven insane by trauma. You said to yourself, people are dying from a sickness you don't understand. The bomb did something impossible, released power that humans were never meant to touch. Why is it so hard to believe it opened doors that should have stayed closed? The argument continues, circular, getting nowhere. Morrison doesn't need translation to understand the conflict. The old woman versus the modern doctor, superstition versus science, both systems of belief struggling to explain the inexplicable. Takeshi sits apart, thinking. His grandmother raised him on stories of yokai and spirits, but his education taught him to dismiss them as metaphor, as primitive attempts to explain natural phenomena. He straddled both worlds, traditional and modern. What he saw tonight doesn't fit either framework. It was too real to be spirit, too impossible to be natural, something in between, or beyond, or entirely outside the categories his mind can process. He thinks about the toy they found, that pristine spinning top in the ruins. He thinks about the child's voice calling for help. Lures, Mizuki would say. Traps to draw prey. But if they're hunting us, Takeshi wonders, why toy with us? Why not just attack, unless they're testing us? Learning about us, the thought chills him more than the direct threat. As the night wears on and no immediate attack comes, the group settles into tense waiting. They take turns watching the entrance while others try to rest, though no one sleeps. Morrison shares his rations, hard crackers and canned meat. They eat mechanically, barely tasting food. Around midnight, Yuki asks Mizuki to tell them what she knows. If we're going to survive until morning, we need to understand what we're facing. Mizuki nods slowly. She settles her back against the wall, cane across her lap, and begins to speak in the cadence of a storyteller, her voice falling into the rhythms her grandmother used. Hiroshima is built on old ground, she begins. Before this city existed, before the castle or the shrines, this land belonged to the water and the dead, the 7 rivers that flow through it. They were sacred once, boundary waters between the world of the living and the world of spirits. My grandmother's grandmother told of creatures that lived in the deep places, in caves beneath the earth, in the cold waters where no light reached. They were born before humans walked this land, old when the mountains were young. Most times they slept, content in darkness. But when blood soaked the earth, when violence tore the veil, during the Mongol invasions, 700 years ago, when foreign ships threatened our shores, people reported seeing pale figures walking among the dead after battles. The survivors called them Shinushi bloodmasters. They fed on the dying, on pain and fear growing strong from suffering. The samurai lords tried to fight them. Steel did nothing. Fire drove them back but didn't kill them. Eventually, the Buddhist monks performed rituals, sealed the deep places with prayer stones and sacred rope. The Kinushi returned to sleep. But every few generations, when war or disaster strikes, they stir. During the Great Earthquake of 1854, when the tsunami drowned thousands, they were seen. During the cholera epidemic of 1879, when the graveyards overflowed, they walked the streets at night. And now we have created death on a scale never before witnessed. 80,000 dead in one moment. That much violence, that much pain concentrated in one place and time. It shattered whatever seals held them, the atomic fire. It didn't just destroy buildings and people, it burned through the barrier between worlds. Dr. Sato shakes his head. Stories. Tales told to frighten children to explain disease and tragedy. Then explain what we saw tonight, Mizuki challenges. Explain the woman with her throat torn out. Explain how that thing moved. I can't, Dr. Sato admits. Not yet, but that doesn't mean... Wait, Takeshi interrupts. Chinushi Bloodmasters. If they feed on death and suffering, why are they still here? Why not attack the hospitals where hundreds are dying? Why hunt in the ruins? The hospitals are full of light and life and hope. Even now, these creatures, they prefer the dark places, the forgotten places. The ruins give them cover, and perhaps... She pauses. Perhaps they prefer their prey to be aware. Fear makes the blood taste sweeter, the old stories say. Morrison has been listening to Dr. Tokter, Sato's whispered translations. He speaks, and the doctor translates. In Montana, the Blackfoot tribes tell stories of the Wendigo creatures that were once human, but became cannibals and transformed into monsters. They hunt in winter, when people are desperate and afraid. He says all cultures have similar stories. Maybe they're based on something real. Something that appears in different forms but is always the same underneath. Collective unconscious, Dr. Sato muses despite himself. Jung's theory, universal archetypes appearing across cultures. But Jung argued these were psychological constructs, not literal. It comes from below, from the collapsed first floor, a slow, deliberate scratching, like claws on concrete. Then clicking, soft and exploratory, Morrison moves to the entrance, rifle ready. The scratching continues, moving along the wall beneath them, searching. Something is testing their hiding place, looking for a way in. Dawn comes slowly, gray light filtering through cracks in the walls. The scratching continued until about 4 a.m., then stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the sound. Now, with daylight, the group cautiously emerges from their shelter. The ruins look different in morning light. Still hellish, but familiar, almost ordinary. Smoke rises from dying fires. In the distance, voices call out. Other survivors beginning their daily search for food, water, family. We need to reach the American command post, Dr. Sato declares. Report what we've seen. Get help. Morrison shakes his head, speaking urgently. Dr. Gentley, Sato translates. He says his commanders won't believe us. They'll think we're suffering from combat fatigue, or trying to spread propaganda. We need proof. Proof, Yuki repeats hollowly. Like the dead woman. With no witnesses except us, there are always records. My grandson worked at the prefectural library before he was conscripted. If the building still stands, there will be documents, old newspapers, historical records. Perhaps we can find evidence that others have encountered these things before. It's a thin hope, but it's something. The group heads northwest toward where the prefectural library stood. The building was concrete, 3 stories, with underground storage for rare documents. There's a chance something survived. The journey takes 2 hours, navigating carefully through the ruins, avoiding areas that look unstable. They see other survivors, hollow-eyed, moving slowly, calling out names of the missing. Takeshi thinks about warning them, telling them not to enter the ruins at night, but what would he say? How would he explain? The library is a burned-out shell, walls standing, but roof collapsed, windows blown out. But the entrance to the underground archives remains intact, stairs descending into darkness. Morrison clicks on a military flashlight, one of several he carries. The beam cuts through the dark as they descend. The stairs are intact, leading to a heavy steel door that stands slightly ajar. Inside, the archives are miraculously preserved. The underground chamber protected its contents from blast and fire. The water has leaked in, damaging some materials. Shelves of books and documents line the walls, filing cabinets stand in rows. Doctor. Sato and Mizuki begin searching while the others stand guard. They're looking for historical records, anything about previous sightings or encounters. After an hour, Mizuki finds something, a ledger from the Hiroshima Sentinel newspaper, dated 1879. She reads aloud entries that chronicle the cholera epidemic that killed thousands. September 15, 1879, three night watchmen report seeing pale figures near the mass graves outside the city, figures described as taller than men, moving like smoke. Watchmen refuse to return to their posts. September 23, 1879, more reports of strange figures. City officials dismiss as panic and exhaustion. Two gravediggers found dead, bodies torn apart. Deaths attributed to wild dogs. October 1st, 1879. Buddhist monks from Mitaki Temple perform purification rituals at the grave sites. Lead monk, Taizen-ji, reports the presence of ancient things that wake when blood soaks the earth. Rituals continue for 7 days. October 8th, 1879, sightings stop. Monks seal the old burial caves with blessed stones and prayer papers. Taizen-ji warns that the seals must be maintained, or the Chi-nushi will rise again. Dr. Taizen. Sato finds another document, a military report from 1904 during the Russo-Japanese War. Hiroshima served as a military staging area, and thousands of wounded returned through the city. The report is stamped confidential, Dr. Sato reads. It details an incident at the military hospital. Patients recovering from wounds at Port Arthur began disappearing from the wards at night. 7 men vanished over 2 weeks. Search parties found their bodies in the ruins of an old temple on the city outskirts, drained of blood, marked with strange wounds. The officer writing the report speculated about desertion or an enemy agent, but his tone suggests he didn't believe his own theories. The case was closed and unsolved, attributed to wild animals. Takeshi finds a folder of newspaper clippings from various years: 1854, 1866, 1892, 1904, 1923, each coinciding with disasters or mass casualties. Each includes reports of strange sightings, unexplained deaths, pale figures in the darkness. It's a pattern, Takeshi says. Every time something terrible happens in Hiroshima, these things appear, and someone, monks, officials, someone, makes them go away, Yuki adds. How? Mizuki flips through a water-damaged text, a collection of Buddhist sutras. The monks used purification rituals, sacred barriers. They didn't destroy the Chi-nushi. They sealed them, sent them back to sleep. So we need a monk, Takeshi says. Does Mitaki Temple still stand? Morrison has been examining a map on the wall, one that shows pre-war Hiroshima. He points to a location northwest of the city center, in the foothills. Sato checks. Mitaki Temple is about 6 kilometers from their current location, outside the main blast radius. There's a chance it survived, and if the monks are still there. Sato calculates. Through the ruins, then up the mountain. We'd arrive after dark. Better than staying here another night, Yuki says quietly. They gather what documents they can carry. Evidence, if they survive to show anyone. As they prepare to leave, Takeshi notices something written in the margin of the 1879 ledger, in different ink added later. The handwriting is shaky, frantic. They remember. They remember everyone who saw them. They will hunt you forever unless the seals are restored. Do not look in their eyes. Do not let them learn your scent. Once marked, you cannot escape. Takeshi doesn't share this with the others. Some knowledge is too terrible to spread. They emerge from the library into the afternoon light. The plan is to reach the city's edge before nightfall, find shelter, then make for the temple at first light. It's safer than trying to travel through the ruins after dark. They move quickly, following main roads where they exist, cutting through ruins where they must. Morrison scouts ahead, using his military training to find the safest routes. The others follow, conserving energy. Around 3 p.m., they stop to rest in the shell of a bank building. The vault stands open, empty, already looted. They sit in the shade, sharing water from Morrison's canteen, eating the last of his rations. Yuki tends to Takeshi's knee, wrapping it tightly. It's swelling, she observes. You're pushing too hard. We don't have a choice. Takeshi replies. Sato examines his medical notes, documenting everything they've learned. His scientific mind struggles to reconcile evidence with belief. Even if these things exist, he says, there must be a rational explanation. Perhaps they're not supernatural at all, but a species we don't know, something that's been hiding. Yuki interrupts. Supernatural or natural, they kill people. They hunt us. We need to stop them, not categorize them. A sound cuts through the afternoon quiet. A child crying. They all freeze. It's the same sound from last night, plaintive and heartbreaking. But now, in daylight, they can hear it more clearly. The crying isn't quite right. The rhythm is off, too regular, like a recording or an imitation, and underneath it, so faint that Takeshi almost misses it, is that clicking. Sato whispers, realizing dawning. Using sounds to lure us. In daylight, Morrison says through translation, it's hunting in daylight. The crying circles them, moving from one direction to another, impossible to pinpoint. And then Takeshi sees it. A figure stands atop a ruined building 50 meters away, silhouetted against the afternoon sky, tall and hunched, with elongated limbs hanging at its sides. It's perfectly still, watching them. Don't move, Mizuki hisses. Don't run. But Yuki stands, wanting to see it clearly, to confirm what her mind refuses to accept. She steps into the sunlight for a better view. The creature moves. It doesn't climb down, it drops, falling 3 stories to land in a crouch that should shatter bones. Takeshi hears the impact, sees dust explode from where it hits, but it rises smoothly. Uninjured. In the clear afternoon light, they see it fully for the first time. Its skin is gray-white, translucent in places, showing shadows of what might be organs or bones beneath. The body is humanoid, but wrong proportions distorted, limbs too long, joints bending in too many places. It stands hunched but still towers, 7 feet tall at least. The head is the worst, skull-like, stretched, with sunken cavities where eyes should be. But inside those cavities burn pale lights, like phosphorus in water. The mouth splits the face horizontally, too wide, and when it opens slightly, they see rows of needle teeth, transparent like glass. The hands, if they can be called that, have 6 fingers each, tipped with black claws that curve like sickles. It wears no clothing, but its body is marked with patterns, burns or brands, scarification that forms symbols Takeshi doesn't recognize. Old symbols, ritualistic. The creature tilts its head, studying them. The clicking comes from its throat, exploratory, curious. Morrison raises his rifle and fires 3 times in rapid succession. The first 2 shots hit center mass. Takeshi sees the impacts, flesh rippling, dark fluid oozing, but the creature doesn't fall. It staggers slightly, then straightens, those burning eyes fixing on Morrison. The third shot hits its shoulder, spinning it halfway around. It shrieks, a sound like metal tearing, high and painful, then bounds away with impossible speed, disappearing behind ruins in seconds. Morrison lowers his rifle, hands shaking. "What the hell?" he whispers in English, needing no translation. Where the creature stood, dark fluid stains the ground. Sato approaches cautiously, kneeling to examine it. "Not blood," he says. "Too thin, too dark, and it's cold." He touches it carefully, brings his fingers to his nose. It smells like ozone and copper, and something else, something I don't recognize. "It can hurt," Takeshi says, trying to find hope in that. "It bled. That means it can be killed." "Maybe," Mizuki says doubtfully. "Or maybe you just made it angry." As if in answer, the clicking starts again. But now it comes from multiple directions, from all around them, and more voices join the child's crying. Adults calling for help in Japanese. American soldiers shouting in English, mimicking perfectly. "They're learning," Dr. Sato whispers in horror. "Adapting." Morrison scans the ruins, trying to count distinct locations. He holds up 5 fingers, then shakes his head, uncertain. "At least 5. Maybe more. We can't fight them," Takeshi states the obvious. "We need to reach the temple." 6 kilometers, Dr. Sato says. 3, maybe 4 hours at our pace. The sun sets at 7 p.m. We'll be in the open when darkness falls. Then we run, Morrison says, understanding clear despite language barriers. The clicking grows louder, closer, tightening around them. Multiple close encounters. The chase becomes a nightmare. The creatures don't attack directly. They pace the group, keeping them moving, driving them like wolves herding prey. Every time Takeshi thinks they've gained distance, he sees movement from the corner of his eye, and hears clicking from just behind. Morrison fires twice more during the first hour, hitting nothing. The creatures are too fast, too smart, using the ruins for cover. They've learned from the rifle, learned to fear its noise, but they don't flee. They adapt. Yuki falls, tripping over twisted rebar. Takeshi hauls her up, feeling something whoosh past overhead. A blur of gray and white, claws missing Yuki's head by inches. It lands ahead of them, crouched in their path, blocking the way. This one is different from the first. Smaller, more slender, with skin that ripples like water. Female, Takeshi thinks, though he's not sure how he knows. Its eyes burn brighter, more malicious. Morrison doesn't shoot. They're too close. The rifle's length makes it unwieldy. He swings the butt instead, catching the creature in its elongated jaw. The creature reels back, shrieking. Two more appear behind it, flanking, coordinated. Sato shouts, finding a gap between collapsed buildings. They squeeze through, Morrison backing through last, rifle held one-handed. The gap is too narrow for the creature's hunched forms. They claw at the entrance, reaching through, arms extending impossibly long, fingers grasping. One catches Mizuki's kimono, tears fabric. Takeshi pulls her free just as black claws scrape her back, drawing blood. They emerge into an open square. Bad tactics, no cover. But they have no choice. Dusk is falling now, the sun touching the horizon, shadows lengthening. The river, Mizuki gasps, pointing. Across the river is the temple path. The Kiyobashi River flows ahead, about 100 meters away. Its water runs dark and thick, choked with debris and bodies. But it represents a boundary. Water, the old stories say. Flowing water blocks many spirits. Maybe it will slow these things. They sprint for the river. Behind them, the creatures emerge into the square. Takeshi glances back and counts 6 distinct forms, spreading out, moving to encircle them. They're cutting us off from the bridge. Dr. Sato shouts. The nearest bridge is already blocked. 2 creatures crouched on its span, waiting. We swim, Morrison says, understanding the tactical situation immediately. The water is contaminated, Dr. Sato protests. Radiation. Better than being torn apart, Yuki snaps. They reach the riverbank and don't hesitate, plunging into the dark water. It's cold, shockingly so, despite the August heat. The current is sluggish but present, pulling them downstream. Takeshi's knee screams protest as he swims one-armed, helping Mizuki, who can barely keep her head up. Behind them, the creatures stop at the water's edge. They don't enter, won't cross. Mizuki was right. But they pace the bank, clicking and shrieking, following the group's progress. Morrison reaches the far bank first, hauling himself out, immediately turning to help the others. He pulls Yuki up, then Mizuki, then Dr. Sato. Takeshi comes last, his knee giving out as he reaches the bank. He collapses on wet stone, coughing up river water that tastes of ash and death. Move, Morrison urges. They'll find a bridge, a way across. He's right. The creatures are already spreading out, seeking crossing points. The group forces themselves up, dripping, exhausted, and continues into the foothills beyond the city's edge. Reveal its abilities. The terrain changes as they leave the urban ruins behind. Less rubble, more vegetation. Trees burned by the blast stand as blackened skeletons, but further from the epicenter, some survived. The ground rises steadily, heading toward the mountains where Mataki Temple waits. Full darkness falls. The moon hasn't risen yet. Morrison's flashlight provides their only illumination, a single beam cutting through forest darkness. The clicking has stopped. The silence is absolute. No insects, no birds, no natural forest sounds. Yes, just their harsh breathing and footsteps on the path. They haven't, Mizuki replies. They're waiting. For what? For us to make a mistake. Follow what used to be a pilgrimage path, stone markers showing the way to the temple. Some markers have toppled, but enough remain to guide them. Takeshi estimates they're 2 kilometers from the temple, maybe 30 minutes at their current pace. Then the trees move. Not in wind, there is no wind. They simply move, shifting position, branches reaching. Takeshi blinks, thinking exhaustion plays tricks on his eyes. But no, the forest itself is reshaping around them, the path they're following, closing behind. New paths opening to the sides. They're hurting us, Morrison says, recognizing the tactics. Sato shines the flashlight into the trees and catches a glimpse of movement. Shapes flowing through branches, defying gravity, clinging to trunks at impossible angles, at least 4, maybe more. Using the forest canopy to surround them, one drops onto the path ahead, landing with a thud that shakes the ground. In the flashlight beam, they see its full horror. This creature is larger than the others, possibly male, with additional markings burned into its flesh. Symbols that seem to writhe in the light. Its eyes burn brighter, more aware, more intelligent. When it clicks, the others answer from the darkness. A language, Takeshi realizes. They're communicating. The lead creature opens its mouth impossibly wide and speaks. The word is perfect, the child's voice they heard in the ruins. But coming from that throat, it's obscene, wrong. The creature is mimicking, using sounds to confuse, to terrify. Then it speaks again, in Takeshi's voice. His own words thrown back at him. Did anyone else see anything? And in Dr. Sato's voice, there must be a rational explanation. And in Yuki's voice, twisted, mocking, what is it? They're not just mimicking, they're learning language, syntax, meaning. These aren't mindless predators. They're intelligent. The shot hits the creature's chest, tearing a hole that oozes dark fluid. It staggers but doesn't fall. Instead, it laughs. A horrible sound that starts as Morrison's voice and dissolves into clicks and shrieks. The other creatures descend from the trees. The group breaks and runs. Formation abandoned, every person fleeing for their lives. The creatures pursue, no longer toying, done with whatever game they were playing. Takeshi runs despite his knee, adrenaline overriding pain. He can hear them behind him. Feet hitting the ground in a rhythm that's almost, but not quite human. Clicking rising to a crescendo. And underneath it all, his own voice calling his name. Something catches his shirt, tears it. Claws scrape his back, drawing blood. He dives forward, rolling, coming up running. Behind him, the creature that grabbed him collides with a tree, or rather, flows around it, reforming on the other side without losing speed. Ahead, Morrison has stopped, taking a stand. He's firing measured shots, not panicking, using the rifle properly. Yes, sir. One creature goes down, its legs shattered, but it crawls forward still, dragging itself with its arms. Another takes a shot to the head. Finally, a kill. The creature collapsing and not rising. They can die. Morrison shouts. Headshots. But he has limited ammunition, and there are so many of them. Sato and Mizuki have stayed together, the old woman surprisingly spry, her cane forgotten. They dodge through the trees, using the terrain for cover. A creature drops from above, landing between them. Its claws rake Dr. Tartar, Sato's arm, tearing through his suit jacket, drawing blood. Mizuki grabs a fallen branch and swings it with surprising strength, hitting the creature across its face. The branch breaks, but the creature reels back, disoriented. Yuki has gone in a different direction, separated from the others. Takeshi hears her scream and changes course. Following the sound, he finds her backed against a large tree, 2 creatures circling her. They're playing with her, taking turns darting close, drawing back, savoring her fear. Takeshi doesn't think, just reacts. He grabs a rock and throws it, hitting one creature in the back of its head. It spins, fixing those burning eyes on him. Now both creatures turn away from Yuki, focusing on Takeshi. He's given her a chance to run, but now he's the target. They move toward him in perfect synchronization, flanking. Takeshi backs up, knowing he can't outrun them, can't fight them. His knee gives out and he falls, landing hard. The creatures loom over him, mouths opening wide. He can see down their throats, not just teeth, but teeth behind teeth, rows descending into impossible depths. Their breath washes over him, cold and smelling of graves. A gunshot, one creature's head explodes, showering Takeshi with dark fluid. Morrison, appearing from the trees, rifle smoking. The second creature spins toward this new threat. Morrison works the bolt, chambering another round, and fires. This shot takes the creature in the chest. Not enough. It charges him. Morrison drops the rifle and pulls a combat knife, meeting the charge with the desperate courage of a soldier who knows he's about to die. The creature impales itself on the blade, its momentum driving the knife deep, but it doesn't stop. It keeps coming, pushing itself further onto the blade to reach Morrison with its claws. Takeshi watches in horror as the creature tears into Morrison's shoulder, drawing blood. The soldier screams but holds on, twisting the knife, finding something vital. Finally, the creature shudders and collapses, taking Morrison down with it. Yuki and Dr. Sato reach them, pulling Morrison free. His shoulder is badly torn, blood soaking his uniform. Yuki immediately begins field treatment, tearing strips from her own clothing to bind the wound. How many more? Dr. Sato gasps. Too many, Morrison grits out. I'm almost out of ammunition. Through the trees, they see shapes moving, circling. The creatures have pulled back momentarily, regrouping, but they haven't fled. More clicking echoes through the forest, calling for reinforcements. Takeshi realizes with dread. The temple must be closed, Mizuki says, her voice steady despite the terror. We run. We don't stop, no matter what. I can't run, Morrison says, looking at his shoulder. Then I carry you, Takeshi says, already moving to help the larger man up. You can barely walk yourself. We don't leave anyone, Takeshi interrupts. We all survive, or none of us do. Morrison nods, respect in his eyes. He slings his uninjured arm over Takeshi's shoulders. Dr. Sato takes his other side. Together they move forward, Yuki and Mizuki leading, following the path markers that promise salvation. Behind them, the creatures shriek and resume their pursuit. They break out of the tree line onto an open hillside. Above them, maybe 500 meters distant, they see it. Mitaki Temple, miraculously intact, its red gates and tiled roofs illuminated by paper lanterns. But between them and the sanctuary stretches open ground, no cover, nowhere to hide, and the creatures are coming, bursting from the forest behind them. Go, Morrison shouts. Leave me. I'll hold them. Shut up, Takeshi says affectionately, and they run together, half carrying the American. The creatures pour onto the hillside. 8, 10, maybe more. In the moonlight that's finally risen, they're fully visible. A nightmare made flesh. Moving up the slope with supernatural speed, Yuki reaches the temple gates first. She hammers on them, screaming for help in Japanese. Tasukete, monks, anyone. Please. In the name of mercy, open. Nothing. The temple appears abandoned. The creatures are halfway up the slope now. Mizuki pushes past the younger people and places her hands flat on the gate. She begins to chant old sutras, Buddhist prayers for protection. Her voice is clear and strong, cutting through the night. Something shifts. From inside the temple grounds, a voice calls out, "Who seeks sanctuary?" Survivors. Frami, Mizuki shouts back. Pursued by Chinushi. We seek the protection of Buddha and the Dharma. A long pause. The creatures are 100 meters away. The gates swing open. A single monk stands there, elderly, wearing traditional robes. He takes in the scene, the exhausted survivors, the pursuing creatures, and makes a decision. Inside, quickly, they stumble through. Takeshi and Dr. Aishi Sato bring Morrison, who's lost consciousness from blood loss. The moment they cross the threshold, the monk slams the gates shut and bars them with a heavy timber. The creatures hit the gates seconds later. The impact shakes the frame, ancient wood groaning, but it holds. The creatures scrabble at it, clawing, shrieking in frustration. The barriers still hold, the monk says calmly. For now. He leads them deeper into the temple grounds. Other monks emerge, 5 more, all elderly. They carry Morrison to a building where they lay him on tatami mats. Yuki immediately resumes treating his wounds. The head monk introduces himself as Jokai, the temple's abbot. He's nearly 90, with a face like carved wood and eyes that have seen too much. "You brought them here," he says, not accusatory. "We didn't know where else to go," Takeshi replies. "We found records. The temple has dealt with these things before." "Yes," Jokai confirms. "For generations. After each catastrophe they wake. After each, we reseal them." He shakes his head. "This time is different. The violence was too great. The barrier between worlds is too badly torn. I'm not sure our rituals will be enough. You have to try," Yuki pleads. "People are dying. Survivors who escaped the bomb are being hunted." Jokai nods slowly. "We will try. Can you tell me how many creatures you saw?" "At least 10, Dr. Sato estimates. Maybe more. And they've learned to hunt in groups, to coordinate." When they nod, Jokai's expression darkens. Then they're stronger than before. The atomic fire fed them, gave them power. This will be difficult. Outside, the creatures continue their assault on the gates, but something keeps them from the temple grounds proper. Ancient prayers carved into stone, sacred ropes strung between posts, centuries of accumulated spiritual protection. For the moment, they're safe. But dawn is still hours away, and the night is full of clicking and screams. Final showdown. The monks work through the night. They prepare a ritual of banishment, pulling out scrolls and implements that haven't been used since 1904. The ceremony requires specific conditions, certain prayers spoken at specific times, offerings made, a mandala drawn with blessed sand around the main temple hall. But most importantly, it requires blood. The Chinushi are drawn to blood and suffering, Jokai explains. To banish them, we must offer a lure they cannot resist, then trap them within the sacred mandala while performing the ritual. A sacrifice, Mizuki says quietly. Not necessarily a death, Jokai clarifies, but someone must offer their blood willingly, must serve as bait to draw the creatures into the trap. Yas. The survivors exchange glances. They're all injured to some degree, scraped, cut, bleeding, but deliberately offering more blood, making themselves vulnerable. "I'll do it," Takeshi says. "No," Yuki protests immediately. "Your knees, you can barely walk, if you need to move quickly." "That's exactly why it should be me. I'm the slowest. I'd hold the rest of you back anyway. This way I'm useful." Morrison, conscious now and bandaged, speaks through Dr. Sato's translation. He says if it requires a soldier's blood, an enemy's blood, his might be more potent. The creatures have attacked him specifically. They remember him shooting them. All blood is the same to them, Jokai says. What matters is the willingness of the offering. Coerced blood has no power. The bait must choose their role freely. In the end, they all volunteer. Even Dr. Frast and the Dr. Sixth, Sato, who still struggles with believing in spiritual solutions, offers himself, unable to let others take risks he won't share. Jokai smiles sadly. "Then we will use all of you. 6 points of the mandala, 6 offerings. But you must understand, once we open the gates and draw them in, there will be no escape until the ritual is complete. If we fail, if the barriers don't hold, the creatures will kill us all. If we do nothing, they'll kill more survivors," Yuki says. "We have to try." As dawn breaks, the preparations are complete. The mandala is drawn in the temple's main courtyard, a complex geometric pattern of circles, triangles, and Sanskrit characters, drawn with colored sand that Jokai blessed. At 6 points around its perimeter, small offering bowls wait. The survivors position themselves at these points. Each makes a small cut on their palm, letting blood drip into the bowls. The scent carries on the morning breeze. The creatures smell it immediately. The assault on the gates intensifies, wood beginning to splinter. "Now we see if the old magic still works," Jokai says. He and the other monks position themselves around the mandala, each holding prayer beads and sutras. Jokai gives a signal. 2 young monks, the youngest at 60, unbolt the gates and push them open. The creatures surge through. For a terrible moment, Takeshi thinks they'll simply attack, overwhelming the temple, but the mandala holds them, not physically, but they stop at its edge, circling, clicking in agitation. They want the blood, the living prey, but something prevents them from simply charging forward. Begin, Shokai commands. The monks start chanting, a deep rhythmic prayer in Sanskrit and Japanese. The sound builds, overlapping harmonies creating strange resonances that Takeshi feels in his chest. The creatures shriek in response, clawing at the invisible barrier, testing it. There are 12 of them, more than they estimated. Some show injuries from Morrison's rifle. Dark fluid still seeping. They look starved, desperate, driven mad by the blood scent. One creature, larger than the others, the same one that spoke in their voices, throws itself against the barrier. The mandala flares, visible for a moment as threads of golden light. The creature recoils, burned. The chanting intensifies. The monks are swaying now, entering a trance state, their voices merging into a single powerful sound. Kashi watches in fascination and terror as the mandala begins to glow, light rising from the sand to form walls. A cage of pure spiritual energy. The creatures trapped inside panic, throwing themselves against these walls. But each touch burns them. It's working, Dr. Sato whispers in amazement. It's actually working. But then the largest creature does something unexpected. It stops fighting. It turns to face Jokai directly, burning eyes fixed on the abbot, and it speaks, in perfect formal Japanese. You cannot hold us, monk. We were ancient when your Buddha walked the earth. We fed on the dying at Sekigahara, at Nagasaki. At every place your kind has brought death, this new fire you've created. It has made us stronger. The barriers weaken, even as you chant. Achakai doesn't pause in his prayers, but Takeshi sees sweat beating on the old monk's forehead and sees the strain. The creature continues, its voice hypnotic. We remember you, old one. We remember all of you. Your blood calls to us now. Even if you seal us today, we will remember. In 10 years, in 50, when the barriers fade as they always do, we will find you. We will feed on your children, your grandchildren, everyone you have ever loved. This is our world. Yas, you are the intruders. Don't listen, Mizuki calls out. It's trying to break your concentration, but the creature's words burrow into Takeshi's mind. What if it's right? What if they're just delaying the inevitable? What if these things will always come back? The mandala flickers, the light dimming. No, do not let doubt enter your hearts. But it's too late. One creature finds a weak point where Takeshi's concentration wavered. It pushes through, the mandala tearing like paper. The creature charges directly at Takeshi. Morrison moves faster than anyone thought possible with his injured shoulder. He tackles Takeshi aside, the creature's claws missing by inches. They roll together, coming up on the mandala's opposite side. But now Morrison is outside the protection, and the creature is turning toward him, seeing easy prey. Yuki screams. Dr. Tan says. Sato moves to help, but another creature is breaking through, the mandala collapsing as the monks struggle to maintain their focus. Takeshi realizes what he has to do. He pulls out a shard of glass he picked up in the ruins, sharp, about 6 inches long. Before his mind can override his body, he drives it deep into his thigh, the pain white-hot and overwhelming. Blood pours from the wound, more blood than the small palm cuts, rich and tempting. Every creature stops and turns toward him. Come on, Takeshi shouts. Come get it. They come. All 12 creatures abandon their attacks on the mandala's edges and converge on Takeshi. He stands in the center, bleeding, terrified, and determined, and the mandala snaps closed around them all. Jokai and the monks redirect their chanting, pouring every ounce of spiritual energy into the trap. The walls of light solidify, growing brighter, contracting. They turn on Takeshi, but Yuki and Morrison have pulled him back, dragging him to the mandala's edge where Mizuki and Dr. Time, Sato guard him. The creatures surge forward, but the light is contracting, crushing them together, burning them. Their shrieks are deafening. They claw at the light, at each other, desperate. The largest creature tries one last time to break free, throwing itself against the barrier with such force that cracks appear in the temple's stone courtyard, but the monks hold. Jokai's voice rises above the others, speaking words of binding, of banishment. The light grows impossibly bright, forcing everyone to look away. When Takeshi can see again, the mandala is empty. The creatures are gone, not killed, Jokai explains, but banished, sent back to whatever dark place spawned them. The sand of the mandala has fused into glass from the spiritual heat, preserving the pattern permanently. How long will it hold? Dr. Sato asks. Generations, if we're lucky. Decades at least. Long enough for those of us here to live out our lives in peace. Yas. But Morrison, through translation, asks the question they're all thinking, what about the next catastrophe, the next war, the next disaster? Won't they come back? But Jokai nods sadly. Yes, they will always come back. But each generation must fight their own battles. We've given you time. What you do with it is up to you. Takeshi's leg wound is serious. Yuki treats it as best she can, but he needs proper medical care. Morrison's shoulder is infected, already showing signs of fever. They all need food, rest, and safety. There's an American military hospital being set up on the outskirts of the city, Morrison says. If we can reach it, they'll treat everyone. Japanese, American, doesn't matter. Medical needs override politics. The monks provide food and clean water. The first proper meal the group has had in days. They rest until noon, regaining strength. Jokai gives them blessed talismans, amulets that will supposedly protect against future supernatural threats. Dr. Sato accepts his with polite skepticism that's clearly shaken. Before they leave, Jokai takes Takeshi aside. You showed great courage, the old monk says, using your own blood to bait the trap. That act of selflessness empowered the binding. Yach, I was terrified, Takeshi admits. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action despite fear. Jokai presses something into Takeshi's hand, a small scroll. This contains the history of the Chi-Nushi, everything we know. If they return in your lifetime, you'll need this knowledge. Pass it on. Make sure the next generation is prepared. Takeshi accepts the responsibility, tucking the scroll safely away. The journey down the mountain is difficult with 2 injured people, but they move slowly. Carefully, by late afternoon, they reach the outskirts of Hiroshima, where American forces have established a perimeter. Morrison hails the sentries in English. There's confusion. What's a Marine doing with Japanese civilians? Why is everyone bloody and exhausted? But Morrison's rank and identification get them through, and soon they're in the field hospital where American medics, working alongside Japanese nurses, begin treatment. 3 days later, Takeshi is well enough to walk with crutches. His leg is healing. The stitch is neat and professional. Morrison is recovering too, his shoulder bandaged and immobilized but showing no signs of infection after antibiotics. They stand together at the hospital's edge, looking toward the ruins of Hiroshima. Smoke still rises in places, but the city is slowly coming back to life. Survivors are returning, clearing rubble, rebuilding. Do you think they're really gone? Morrison asks through a translator, one of the bilingual hospital staff. Takeshi doesn't answer immediately. He's thinking about that last creature, the intelligent one that spoke to them. Its words echo, "We will remember. We will remember all of you." As he watches the ruins in the fading evening light, he sees something move between the skeletal buildings. Just for a moment, just a glimpse, a tall silhouette, hunched and wrong, watching from the shadows. The creature doesn't move, doesn't threaten. It simply watches. Then it turns and disappears into the ruins. No, Takeshi finally answers Morrison. Gone. Just waiting. The survivors hear it on a radio in the hospital. The Emperor's high formal Japanese explaining the necessity of enduring the unendurable. For Takeshi and the others, it's surreal. They survived not just the atomic bomb, but something far older and more terrible. The war's end feels almost anticlimactic. They give their statements to American intelligence officers. Carefully edited versions that leave out the supernatural elements. They report seeing survivors in the ruins driven mad by trauma, attacking people in their madness. This explanation is accepted more readily than the truth would be. Sato documents everything in his journal. The creatures, the temple, the ritual. but he marks it as personal observations, not medical record. Some knowledge, he's decided, shouldn't be shared without proof. Yuki returns to nursing, working in the hospital that's treating radiation sickness. She throws herself into the work, trying to save the living, haunted by memories of pale figures in the dark. Morrison is eventually transferred to Tokyo, then back to the States. Before he leaves, he gives Takeshi his address in Montana, makes him promise to write, to stay in touch. In broken Japanese and hand gestures, he tells Takeshi that what they survived together transcends nationality or war. Mizuki returns to the ruins to search for her family shrine. She finds it 3 weeks later, buried but intact. She prays there for the dead. All the dead, victims of the bomb and victims of the things the bomb awakened. And Takeshi keeps the scroll Jokai gave him. He reads it over and over, committing the knowledge to memory. If the creatures return, someone must know how to fight them. At night, sometimes, he still hears clicking in his dreams. The official record is sanitized. Incomplete. American occupation forces documented 22 unsolved murders in the Hiroshima ruins between August 6th and August 20th, 1945. Victims were found with unusual trauma, inconsistent with blast damage. The cases were closed as deaths due to unidentified factors in a post-atomic environment. Files were classified and remain so. Japanese survivors filed 47 reports of strange encounters in the ruins during the same period. These reports were dismissed as trauma-induced hallucinations, stress responses to unprecedented catastrophe. But the reports share too many consistent details. The pale figures, the clicking sounds, the mimicry of voices. Dr. 5. Kenji Sato published several papers on radiation sickness in the years following the war. Becoming a leading expert, he never published his journal describing the creatures. But it still exists, held by his granddaughter in Tokyo, who occasionally allows researchers to read it. Most consider it allegorical, a way of processing trauma through folklore. Yuki Yamada worked as a nurse until 1967, then founded a survivors advocacy group. She spoke publicly about the bomb's effects, but never mentioned the week she spent fleeing supernatural predators. She died in 1989, her obituary noting her courage and compassion. Corporal James Morrison returned to Montana, married, and had 3 children. He never spoke about Hiroshima except once, to a journalist in 1975, when he mentioned seeing things in the ruins that shouldn't exist. The interview was not published. Morrison died in 1998, his military records noting his service in the Pacific, but nothing about his experiences in post-bombing Hiroshima. Mizuki Tanaka remained in Hiroshima, maintaining her family shrine. She became known as a keeper of old stories, a link to traditional beliefs. Young people would visit her, asking about yokai and spirits. She would smile and say, "The old stories are not just stories, they're warnings." She died in 1961, age 89, reportedly in her sleep. Her funeral drew hundreds. Takeshi's legacy. He became a teacher, as he'd always wanted, educating children born after the war. He married in 1950 and had 2 daughters. He never told his family about what he saw in the ruins, wanting to protect them from knowledge that would bring only fear. But he kept the scroll, and he watched. Every few years, he would see reports. Never official. Always dismissed. A construction worker glimpsing pale figures while excavating the ruins of the old postal building. A fisherman reported something watching him from the riverbank at night. A child claiming a tall, thin person with glowing eyes followed her home from school. Takeshi would investigate quietly. He would ask questions, take notes, and compare descriptions. The pattern was clear. The creatures never fully left. The temple's binding held them mostly, but they lingered at the edges, watching, waiting. In 1964, when Hiroshima hosted the Olympic torch relay as a symbol of peace and recovery, Takeshi stood in the crowd and saw one of them across the street. Just for a moment, a silhouette that didn't match the shape of the man standing in that spot. A flicker of wrongness. The creature, if that's what it was, seemed to meet his eyes, acknowledge him. Then it was just a man again. Ordinary, normal. Takeshi understood. They were always there, just beneath the surface of reality, waiting for the barriers to thin again. In 1975, on the 30th anniversary of the bombing, Takeshi was interviewed for a newspaper article about survivors. He spoke carefully about the importance of peace, of remembering the dead, of learning from history. Then, off the record, after the interview ended, He told the journalist, "We like to think the bomb was the worst thing that happened in Hiroshima, but some of us know it was just the beginning. The bomb opened doors that humans should never have opened." The journalist didn't include this in the article, but she remembered it. Takeshi Yamada died in 1988, age 75, from cancer, likely radiation-induced, like so many hibakusha. On his deathbed, he gave the scroll to his eldest daughter, along with instructions. If strange deaths start happening in Hiroshima, deaths that don't make sense, read this. Do what needs to be done. The scroll remains in her possession. Modern day today, Hiroshima is a modern city, rebuilt, thriving, a testament to human resilience. The Peace Memorial Park stands where the Hipocenter was, a beautiful space dedicated to remembrance and hope for a world without nuclear weapons. But locals know there are parts of the city best avoided at night. The ruins of the old postal building, though cleared decades ago, have never been successfully redeveloped. 3 different construction projects have started and abandoned work there, citing unusual difficulties and worker reluctance to continue. The site remains empty, overgrown, marked by a small historical sign. The Kyobashi River still flows through the city. Occasionally, late at night, people report seeing pale figures standing on its banks, watching the water flow past. Security cameras in the area sometimes malfunction, capturing strange distortions. In 2015, on the 70th anniversary of the bombing, urban explorers posted a video online claiming to show something strange in the ruins of an old shrine on the city's outskirts. The video shows a brief glimpse of a tall, hunched silhouette moving between trees, accompanied by an odd clicking sound. The video went viral briefly before being removed. The original poster never made another video and refuses to discuss what they saw. Mitake Temple still stands, still maintained by monks, though fewer than in 1945. The abbot, Jokai's successor 4 times removed, knows the old stories. He maintains the sacred barriers, refreshes the prayer stones, and keeps the rituals alive. And every August, around the anniversary of the bombing, the temple receives visits from descendants of survivors, people carrying pieces of knowledge passed down in whispers, warnings disguised as family stories. The abbot meets with them privately, compares notes, updates records. The watch continues. Dr. Coynton, Sato wrote in his journal, in an entry dated December 1945, "Science has given us godlike power to destroy, but in unleashing such power, what else have we unleashed? What doors have we opened that should have remained closed?" The question remains unanswered. Researchers studying the atomic bomb's effects focus on radiation, blast damage, and long-term health consequences. They don't look for evidence of the supernatural. Why would they? Science has no framework for such things. But the reports continue, year after year, dismissed, ignored, forgotten. And in Hiroshima, in the deep places beneath the modern city, in caves and tunnels and forgotten basements where survivors once huddled, sometimes late at night, if you listen carefully, you can hear clicking. The creatures are still there, bound by ancient rituals but not destroyed, waiting. Waiting for the barriers to fail, waiting for the next catastrophe, the next violence on a scale that tears the veil between worlds, waiting to feed again. The survivors of 1945 bought us time, but time is running out. The question isn't whether the Chi-Nushi will return. The question is, when they do, will we remember how to fight them? Will the knowledge preserved in scrolls and journals and whispered family stories be enough? Or will we have to learn the hard way, the way Takeshi and the others did, fleeing through ruins with inhuman predators at our heels? Hiroshima stands as a warning against nuclear weapons, against war, against the hubris of nations playing with forces they don't understand. But perhaps it should serve as another warning too. There are doors in reality that should never be opened. Yes, powers that should never be unleashed. And once awakened, some things never truly sleep again. They just wait.